Hi, I'm Gabby Reece, and you're watching Behind the Brand with Bryan Elliott.
Good, let's do that one more time. How do you introduce yourself? Are you...
Oh, like what am I? What's my title?
Let's give people some
Oh,
context.
barf. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gabby Reece. Some of you might know me as a professional retired athlete. I have done a lot of things in health and fitness. Some of you know me as Laird Hamilton's wife. And I am also an entrepreneur and business person. And you are watching Behind the Brand with Bryan Elliott.
Hey, I'm Bryan Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with a very talented and amazing Gabby Reece. Gabby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I usually ask my guests, how'd you get this job?
This is, I think like all the guests, it's a series of events that lead you to any place. And so I think the simplest way to explain it is I fell into sports. I'm 6'3". I had limited opportunity, so I ended up going to college on a scholarship. That was sort of the way I was going to get to college. And when I was in college, I started modeling. Because I was independent, it was more about paying the bills. I never had aspired to be a model, but it was a really good job. You didn't need qualifications. And
Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the Caribbean, in the Virgin Islands, and then in 11th grade, I was moved to Florida to sort of realize it was a bigger world.
So how did you get to the Caribbean? Let's go back in time a little
wow,
bit.
You're going deep now. Okay.
Let's go back in the chronology.
Okay, so I had like most people, a story that I've actually tried to let go of a little bit. When I was very small, my father is from Trinidad. He's West Indian. And my mother is from Long Island, and she was a very adventurous person. And they met in California, actually in Marina del Rey, so all of 2 miles or a mile from here. And I think they had, sort of, it was 1969, so I think it was a little like...
Summer of Love.
Yep. And I was born in January of 1970, and my parents were not together for that long. And then by the time I was 2 years old, my mother was training dolphins in a circus in Mexico City. And she's quite young and, very beautiful, tall woman, and I developed whooping cough. And so a high school friend of hers, or neighborhood friend of hers, came out to Mexico and helped care for me from Long Island. And then when I was about 2.5, I ended up being raised by her and her husband, who had just come back from Vietnam, so 1972, until I was 7. And in 1975, my father passed away in a plane crash. So I was not living with either one of my parents. And so I think if you look at my path, it's probably been influenced by me navigating survival on some level. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really great tool, and we can get into that later. But then you have to adapt, and you have to get other tools and new tools. And so I think that's become really important for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that super personal information.
It's okay.
You said in the beginning that it's a story you've been trying to get away from. What did you mean by that?
As I get older, I realize that we always have a story. Oh, my parents were this, and I'm this, and it's that. And in some ways, I think it is important to understand. You can use your reference, this story, but I also think it's limiting because it's the same story. And hopefully I've evolved as a person, and I've developed a new story. And so I think when I say that is because I've also realized that I've developed a lot of very helpful traits that have brought me a lot of success, but also will limit me. Mostly you realize it as a parent first, I will say. And then you'll realize that it might even inhibit you in your relationship, even a great relationship, and even certainly in your business. So I think for me, it's like trying to recognize the tale, but not continue to associate with that story.
Yeah, and also, if I'm reading between the lines, it sounds like you're saying not lean on it as an excuse.
Yeah, or just like, oh, that's how come I'm this way.
Right.
Like I have some very intense, survival instincts, and I'm pretty linear, and I'm always looking ahead and planning ahead. And these traits are helpful, but they are limiting. And so also, if I'd like to flourish and continue to flourish, I have to take a look at that, and I'm responsible for that. You know, it's like you can go, well, they did this, so I'm like that, and that's pretty much like, I call it circling the bowl. Then you're there. So when I say that, I am very grateful for my path, because all of us should be, even if it's painful. And there's people who have suffered a million times worse than I have. And so I think it's also acknowledging, like, it could always be worse, but I mean, it can always be better, but it could always be way worse. And I think for me, it's saying, hey, you know what? It was hard, but I've had a really amazing adult life. And as far as I know, we're adults a lot longer than we're kind of young people living under someone's roof. And I also accept kind of that there was maybe some divine reasons, and to kind of go, okay, I'll just sort of grow from that. So anyway, so then I did actually move back in with my mother, and my stepfather was from Puerto Rico, so we moved down to the Caribbean, which was actually really good for me, because also looking back in hindsight, I could now identify with my father's culture because his family is still alive, but also if I went forward, what really bonds my husband and I is actually not that we're tall and blonde and athletic, it's that we were raised on islands. And so I think that there are some things that really have helped me being raised on an island. And then my junior year of high school, I got moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, because I think my mother sort of saw my parents divorced, my stepfather and my mother, that I probably needed some structure. And that's when I got involved with volleyball. So she was correct.